All right, let's get this party started. What do you think, Orlando? Huh? What do you think? We can get the party started? I just gave him some temptations and he's licking his chops. Now he's heading towards the window. Did you like that? Did you? All right. I'm going to start out with a little bit of music here. I've got two people already. Wow. Yes, we are going to discuss David Schurter today, mostly in relation to Max Spiers, because David has used Max Spiers and his what happened to him in a for his own benefit, and he also has lied and he has used it as a weapon against me. And we're going to discuss it today. So, but I'm going to start off with a song. This is Super Soldier Sunday. I started Super Soldier Sunday this summer, and I've talked about James Casbolt. He came back actually into the stratosphere after being gone for a really long time. And then we did a here and not my rabbit hole. We had a remembering Max Spiers when in July 9 years ago we lost him, and so I thought this would be really befitting to put this under the make it a Super Soldier Sunday, because this is a super soldier thing, right? I mean, Max Spiers in certain communities on YouTube see him that way. Now, in the public at large, he's known as a UFO researcher. And I know I haven't played music yet. Okay, I'm sorry. I just started talking, and usually when you live stream, you're not supposed to just go woo and just start talking. You want to like give it some time for people to come in. But I imagine this is going to be replayed, and so it's not really going to matter in the end anyways, right? So in terms of Max Spiers in the larger public, he was known as a UFO researcher. He had a famous grandfather, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. So there's a lot more to Max Spiers and what happened to Max than David Schurter, gives credit for or even discusses. I mean, if you're going to talk about somebody who is no longer with us, was in the media, and you have a YouTube channel, you want to give the well-rounded picture of what that person is, not just take a little slice of who they are and then assume that that is all about what you're talking about. And that's pretty much what we're going to explore today. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but that is, I guess, maybe an underlying nuance that as you watch this, I would just kind of keep that in mind. And so I'm going to start out with a song. This was I actually created these songs on Suno.com and for Super Soldier Sunday. And so this is about this genre of YouTube. And so here we go.
Indigenous ancestors weaving you the void, drowned in your brain, making you insane. Wrapping up Benjamin Fulford, living the absurd like a blue avian nerd, keeping the lines blurred. Captain Mark Richards, a secret space program grifter, getting married while in prison, making you listen, create a new religion, doing the reptilian, making you forget my sins. Super soldier talks in prison, Nordic and Draco, shape shifting in my Winnebago. Indigenous instincts weaving you the void, drowned in your brain, making you insane. Grabbing the Benjamin forward, living the absurd like a blue avian nerd, keeping the lines living like Benjamin forward, living the absurd like a blue avian nerd, keeping the lines blurred. Rapping like Benjamin Fulford,
And then I'm gonna let this one play too. All right, just humor me here.
Extraterrestrial hybridized DNA. Don't need to worry about tooth decay. Kevin Spacey and his clone are feeling alone. Men who stare at goats. The Thrill Society road. Super Soldier Sunday, just another fun day. 75 years on Mars, lying about the stars. Captain Richard Charms like Charles Manson's gun. Liars in the sun. Liars in the sun. Monsters in the sun. Montauk, Super Soldier Talk, Super Space Program. Let's chat. Montauk, Super Soldier Talk, Super Space Program. Let's chat.
Oh my god, I have like somehow there was a hold on. Oh my god, I have like somehow my own show came on my own cell phone, and so I was hearing my own show being played off my. It was weird. Oh, there's a weird loop. Ooh, maybe it has something to do with the topic we're talking about, and the super soldier. The secret space program. There is a lot of talk being done about aliens right now. I was just watching Cinema Shogun. I don't know if you watch his YouTube channel, but apparently JD Vance is, instead of worrying about Jeffrey Epstein and having them vote on making sure that we get the FBI files sent to everybody, he has publicly said that while they're taking their little break or whatever, he's going to focus on UFOs. And there's this rumor that we're supposed to have an alien incident, like an invasion or whatever, like we're preparing for aliens that might be hostile to Americans, or not just Americans, just the world in general. So there's this whole talk about the possibility of an alien invasion, and that's something that I feel that David Schroeder has failed to include in his narrative. It's like, if you're gonna do like 45 minutes of sprinkle every single video with some doomsday event, like, hey everybody, you're all gonna die pretty soon anyway, so you might as well just, this is what it's going to happen to you when you go, because you're that awful of a person. And it's true if you really think about it. And I'm not backing David Schroeder, but there are a lot of things happening globally in terms of weather and earthquakes and tsunamis. And just today, New Jersey had an earthquake, or was it New Jersey? It was near there, up near New York, right? There was an earthquake, and and they don't usually have them, and I don't know. It just feels like our Earth is struggling, maybe. And Max Spiers, when I interviewed him, because I did interview him, even though David Schroeder says that I didn't, and so did Angela Power Disney, which is crazy to me because she full on knew that I had interviewed Max, which is really weird. So and maybe I'm saying that because a lot of people have, they echo similar things at the same time on their YouTube channels. Like, for example, they'll lie together about something. And I find that unusual because, like, for example, with Angela Power Disney, um, and if you're new to my channel, and I don't want to go on about Angela Power Disney and these people, I don't want to trail, because I can tend to go down these different sidelines of stories, because it's kind of intriguing for me how I even know any of these players. And, why, in a way, like if you were going to write a screenplay, right? There would be my character, doing Not My Rabbit Hole YouTube channel, and these other people that would be, the protagonists, the one, or the antagonists, right? They would be the antagonists. They would be the villain. And, in my mind, how I guess, internalize this, right, in some ways, is that, David Schurter is the villain in my screenplay. Okay. I mean, for right now, in this part of the story. Now, I've had different villains. I mean, if you had come to my channel, a year ago, that villain would have been Denise Matau. But what's interesting about the two people is they said things about me publicly that were the same at the same time, which, as a person who's trying to, like, let's say I'm in my screenplay, I'm the detective trying to figure out what it exactly is happening to me, right? With these people, and the loudness of it. And then there's, and these people who do these things on the internet, right, do it to other people. And then sometimes the other people do it back to them. So I guess as a viewer, if you're even in this weird pocket of YouTube that is peripherally connected to a lot of things like UFO community and, the 17th letter of the alphabet community, big time, like these different underlying things, certain radio stations and networks, right? And I'm in that. All right. If you're new to my channel, or if you know me, if you just know me outside of this, because, this part of my life, I don't even share with everybody in my real life. I'm not even sure if they would even be able to conceptualize what I'm even talking about. But it is this underbelly of a flow of things that happen on the internet. And it's connected to what is happening right now on the political arena surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, I wrote an article, and I will make sure that I pull it up here. But I wrote, just so you know, I mean, I don't know if everybody knows this about me, but in really soon, next month, I'm going to be returning to college to go for an MFA in creative nonfiction writing. And it's a genre that I've fallen in love with, and I think it's a really good fit for me because, I can write memoirs or essays or things that are personal experiences of me, like testimonies or viewpoints. And if you start to connect it to something that's, an issue that is happening for real right now, it also is journalism too. Like there's a form of journalism where people read essays or whatever in publications, or it's an opinion piece. So I wrote an opinion piece that I just had to I had to get out of me. I had it because of the experience of being in being in this media is like, and I guess like I have to, like, like as you say, your past, it never really, it's part of your present in a way. It's what you come with, as I don't know what the age is of what everybody is that's listening to me. But at some point in your life, you come with the older you get, right? And even if you're an artist, I think, or a writer, the more tools or the more experiences you have the more the larger the more the rich. It's a rich story. It's marinated. It's a lifelong thing. It's years. This is decades of me being in online media. And, I would say that I'm part of the pioneers of online media, being that I was already live streaming on Ustream before there was live streaming available on Instagram. Like, I was already creating content within the technology that we had at the get-go, and was doing radio shows online about things. And a lot of it was, activism and things that I believed in at the time. Because whatever I've done on the internet and even especially now, I'm sure that I have some new subscribers, and thank you so much for being here. And welcome to Not My Rabbit Hole. But I've spent a long time doing radio shows, interviews, panel shows, and my entry into doing online radio was either activism, human rights, freedom issues, things that were happening politically, and or it was something that had to do with UFOs, the paranormal, and things like this that actually cross-sectioned with what was happening with the Trump campaign in 2016 and after his election. And you can literally I know it. You know why I know it? It connects because I lived it. Because I was on the networks that I saw that shift happen. I experienced it. And it's different. And I experienced it as a media person, a host. I produced certain shows. I even cast shows during that time, or found the guests, or fleshed out the topic we were going to be talking about. And one of those people that I met within interviewing people, and where my curiosity took me in that world, because it's like, it's all things conspiracy, everything. Dave McGowan's book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and the Thought of the Military Industrial Complex, and just the Vietnam War, and Jim Morrison, and the Manson murders, and it all goes into that. The Nixon administration, what happened to JFK. If you think about it, Oliver Stone is a director that really brought some of these conspiracies into the forefront, into the collective, the larger consciousness of people and their curiosity and the validity, maybe even, of people believing that we don't have the whole story of what happened to John F. Kennedy. Like, it's almost like our minds can't rest, because we know that there's a piece missing, an integral piece of what we need to know to understand what exactly happened to him. And I know, like, a lot of filmmakers that were doing independent films about it. Ed Asner was working on a project that unfortunately he and his partner Gil Toth lost for some weird, I don't know, business thing. The project slipped out of their hands and went into somebody else's, but was completed, I believe. And if you look at, if you really want to get down to pointing something out, and I have pointed out, is look, Oliver Stone's son, Sean Stone, is in the mix of all of this. And he's in the mix of promoting the 17th letter of the alphabet. Juan O'Savin, Carrie Cassidy did it. All these people that I remember when I first entered into what you would call the truth media, or the alternative media, or the media that's not the mainstream media. We were going to talk about things that we thought the government and big pharma was covering up, and all these different things, right? I mean, that's how I remember it. Now I'm worried even saying that. And I mean, that's the past. It wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be going in certain areas on Not My Rabbit Hole, because there's such a tight rein on what we can even say on YouTube anymore. And, this media that, at one point we were freely talking about whatever we wanted, like pirates, literally. Freedom of speech was like, wow, we could come up with any crazy idea and theory we wanted to think about something. And, what if it was a hot topic, and whatever somebody's theory might be would have like taken off like wildfire sometimes. And then when all the bushes and everything else just burns down to the ground around you, and you just see dust, then you wipe your eyes and you go, oh, wait a second, I can kind of see clearly now what might have been going on here. And for me as a person, having going through this and then getting a degree in digital journalism and learning other things, it kind of opens your scope up of not every side can, like, there was a time where I went, oh, I believed what Trump said when he said fake media, you're fake media. I believed it. I believed that that's what was going on. One of the reasons why I even started shooting things with my cell phone and live streaming with my cell phone, or capturing protests and streaming protests eventually in the streets of not only California, but also up in Oregon, was because there was at that time this counter narrative that the journalist, the street journalist, the citizen journalist, there's nothing more dynamic now. I mean, since we all have cell phones, is like we can turn our camera on and capture anything at any moment that's happening, and boom, it's documented, and even the news stations use it now. So our whole dynamic of information has changed. And by the way, if you do want to read my story, which goes into more detail about what I'm talking about right now, you can check out my Substack at Tere Joyce Randolph, and I have written Confessions of an Ex-MAGA. Because, I will get into David Schroeder, and I realize some people may be coming here and they go, I don't really know who David Schroeder is. you might have found Not My Rabbit Hole because you saw my interview with Max Spiers from 2015, and you decided to like my channel, and maybe you see some things that I post about Max Spiers here and there, because I keep going, because to be honest with you guys, what happened to Max Spiers, my mind doesn't rest. It's one of those things that I mentioned earlier. Like, it's like you can't find that. You're looking for that piece of the puzzle to give you the rest of the information. Like, something's missing from him, from what happened to him. Something's missing. Like, David Schurter will be on, and by the way, David Schurter is a person who came around, I guess he started coming up around online around maybe 2011, 2012. He wrote a book called Rabbit Hole. Now, ironically, I named my channel Not My Rabbit Hole, not thinking about David Schurter at all, but thinking about how the rabbit hole is always used in this manipulation within this media. I see it in many ways as being a psychological manipulation. It's a trope that is used that I think does things to people. The whole thing about Alice in Wonderland and going down the rabbit hole, and she eat me and drink me, and the aspects of going into another reality and then calling that reality. Like, if you think about the Matrix movies, which is something that a lot of this media was based on, was do you take the red pill and you see what reality really is, and you handle that truth and whatever discomfort and physical challenges or whatever that brings you, to fight for what reality is, or our true self not being controlled by something, right? Whether that be the internet, or our society at large, or the feeling that we watched television and we took in what was told to us by experts and this person and that person, and the standard of belief is blank. And if you for 1 second thought outside of that standard of belief, then you were ridiculed, or why am I thinking this way, or whatever. And I think that maybe a lot of us that did think out of that standard of belief and question things and go, wow, am I being duped? Is this like a puppet show? I've seen this before. Sometimes I look at things that happen in the world and I go, okay, so that's going to be your answer for that? But this is a different situation. Last night, I felt like I wanted to lighten my media up a little bit. It's like, I feel like even inside myself, I've gotten kind of dark about in feeling. When I say dark, I'm not saying dark like evil. I'm saying just more melancholy about what is taking place in the world right now. When you live longer, and I'm saying I'm a woman of an older age. I shouldn't say that, because that puts realities out in the universe. I've been on a planet for a while. And you know what? I'm kind of one of those people that thinks that maybe it's not my first time on the planet. Because even though the closest thing I would consider myself would be to a Christian, although I don't even like that label of what that is, because that still has been institutionalized as a weapon, really, a means of control on society. And I don't like that. I don't think that, even if that, I don't think that's not what I think God is, or even what God would want, really. But that's just me. See, maybe that's my out of the box thinking that, I could be ridiculed for. Because in some way, we're supposed to stay in line and we're supposed to think a certain way. And it's supposed to be just like this. And this is just the way it is. Now, sit down and eat your porridge. Who eats porridge anymore? Where did that come from? So, what's interesting to me is, I interviewed Max Spiers. I was interested in some of the things that he had to say. For some reason, I felt connected to him. And I don't know how to explain that, right? I mean, sometimes you meet people or you hear their voice or something happens, and for some reason, there's an identification or a connection, or you like them, or you like to listen to what they have to say. And there was a lot of things that he said that resonated with me as being a possibility of what was really happening in the United States, and on when you talk about like leader elite kind of thing. If you want to talk about like a cabal or an Illuminati or Masons or secret societies or whatever, there were things that he said that I felt for some reason was a possibility, that I went, yeah, that feels right. And I guess I should say this too. I should just say this publicly, and maybe this is a good thing, to share with everybody. I found out later, I would say I was in my 50s when I found out that my family was the lineage of the Knights Templars. And I found out certain things about even like my DNA, because my mother had a DNA test. And, I did have uncles that are Freemasons. And, and an aunt that was an Eastern Star. And, these were things that I wasn't really like aware of. Like, I didn't think about it much. It wasn't really, I didn't know much about it, right? And, it wasn't until this media happened that I started hearing all these awful things about it, right? How bad, Sigerstein, Satan's, and Luciferian, blah, 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 those kind of stuff, right? And like, one day, I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe someone said, Gino, your daughter's on like, Revolution Radio talking bad about Masons or something like that. I don't know what happened, right? But just like at some point out of the blue, my mom goes, oh, Tere, speaking of the Illuminati, we are the lineage of the Knights Templars, and went on, and she goes, so when you talk about us, could you not be too awful to us? Like, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. I'm trying as a person to, not necessarily think just black and white. That there are great areas of, goodness in people, despite what their affiliations or roles are in, have been, or their lineage has been, or whatever. Because a lot of people, think that we have our ancestors in us. Their knowledge is in us. Their abilities is in us. Their fighter is in us. Like, for example, I was watching Woodward TV, and he was going the whole thing in that about how possibly there's things in people that when they are challenged enough, or when they are in that boom, I gotta survive mode, other things or abilities that may have been part of their ancestral knowledge gets activated. Now, I know, like, I can just hear it right now. I've got friends or colleagues where that's a bunch of woo. That is a bunch of woo. Stop it. And maybe it is. And then maybe it isn't. Right? I mean, my feeling is it's better to be prepared for what isn't, just in case it is. Because I think that there is one belief that probably unifies us, in those of us that, I don't know, everybody who's been a host feels this way, but someone like me, I'd say, is there's that feeling that there is a 1% that's running it, that has all the wealth, has everything. And I think that people are, for a while, have been feeling a loss of control or a loss of choice in what happens to them, how they retire, how they get their Social Security. Are they going to have enough to eat? Are they going to have enough, resources to clothe their children? I mean, when it really comes down to it, we're all the same that way. We're all human. But then there's some people that think maybe they're not human. That they are that they mate with an alien cat queen and say that Trump is their president. Because that's the kind of connection that has happened in our society. And in a way, this conversation about Max Spiers and what Max Spiers' story was, and how someone like David Schurter, who has a completely different narrative, but also a part of this media, also echoing things, or is used as an example of proving what a right-wing conspiracy did. There is a connection to David, and the people that had the YouTube channels that had him on as a guest are connected to the people that help spread that narrative into American politics, into our representatives, into Kash Patel, who was nominated for the FBI director, who we were all waiting for, some Epstein files that didn't really happen. And even what Max Spiers spoke about connected to Epstein in the narrative, in what happens. But here's what's interesting for me about when you get to narratives and you get to players on YouTube who have absolutely no integrity on fact checking or telling the truth, or it doesn't matter what is happening trending in the algorithm on YouTube or 4chan or somewhere on Twitter at that time. No, they're just like, social media whores, basically. And they will like take that algorithm and attach a story of themselves to that. And that's exactly what Stephen D. Kelly did. With the Getty stuff. Because I know the Getty story didn't involve children being trafficked when it started in 2013 and 2014. Because you want to know why? Because I was there doing shows with him in 2014. I witnessed it. And he became the center of that map. And he also claimed to have super soldier abilities and was present at that super soldier summit in Henderson, Nevada. And big players like James Rink all of a sudden became right wing, promoting the same narratives. So, let's get into it.
You're caught in a lie, and I know why. Tangled truths won't fly, you can't deny. Think you'll vanish, but have no fear. You're bound, you're found, you're here, my to pretend you're just a serpent in the end. Caught in a lie, and I know why. You think you'll disappear, but have no fear. You're here to stay, and no one believes you today. Bye-bye, fake, go trying to play the game. Just another snake, but you're all the same. You're trapped in illusions, no more disguise. Those webs of deceit unravel your eyes. Your game is over, no need to hide. Caught in the truth where you'll collide. To escape fate, just another trickster meeting your day. You think you'll vanish, a fleeting charade, but mirrors shatter, exposing the facade. Reality whispers, the truth prevails. Caught in a lie, the illusion fails. Caught in a lie. I know why. You think you'll disappear, but have no fear. You're here to stay, and no one believes you today.
All right, welcome back. I always laugh at that scream at the end. It's like so raging. All right. So we're gonna get into it. I know I went on like a ramble there, and I just kind of said some of my thoughts. But this is kind of a morning rant. I hope you're having some coffee if it's still morning for you. I know. Welcome, Ben. Ben and I just did a stream together on Friday, a couple days ago, and I really think it was delightful and a good show. And so we did a debate over the alien autopsy footage that came out like in 1947 or so. And then let me see. I should probably I didn't bring my mouse over here. Let me get that really quick. Just give me a second. Talk amongst yourselves. This is a one-woman show. I have no I am my own producer. So yeah. Yeah. I restreamed some of Ben. I don't know if you noticed this. I restreamed some of our stuff, like part 1 on our UFO stream, and then I'm going to do part 2 to probably maybe later today or tomorrow. And so it was on X. It's on X. It's gotten some pretty good views on X, and also on Rumble. So it's getting a little bit more play. And I'm going to also put it up on my Spotify. Yes, there is a Not My Rabbit Hole Spotify, so please do check that out as well. And on my Substack too. And all of these things, if you go to the Not My Rabbit Hole, like my actual channel, I have links. And one of them is buymecoffee.com. That's /Tere Joyce, if you're so inclined to buy me a cup of coffee. So I'm not going to say things like David Schroeder does, I only have $5 and it's the 15th and I'm not going to be able to eat. Like, I'm not going to say that. All right. So I always want to respect people that might be coming to my channel for the first time. So I hope I don't sound too redundant for the people that already know, but I'll try to contextualize things really as succinctly as I can. All right. So Max Spiers, also known as, I think, Max Bates, born. His mom is Vanessa Bates. He is, he grew up in Canterbury, England. And I would say maybe like around, his mom is a school teacher. And his grandfather was a fairly famous actor especially in the UK. And ironically, I remember this actor as a child watching, because my mom has always been a movie buff. So when I was growing up, I was watching Dick Van Dyke, and I would say I was watching Laugh-In when I was growing up. And the Smothers Brothers, those kind of shows were on television. And then also there was like Sonny and Cher and a lot of variety shows and game shows and what have you. Movies like Planet of the Apes came out for the first time, and Westworld, the first Westworld, and movies like Soylent Green and Logan's Run and the Stepford Wives, the original. I think those are kind of like growing up were movies that influenced me. I mean, then there was E.T. and the one with the, what is that one? The Third Kind? Something with the Third Kind. I didn't put the Rutger Hauer short on Rumble, but I did part one. You know, oh, I'm just responding to Ben, who's part of the show actually, and we're gonna do a show on the Fresno Walkers, the Fresno Skywalkers, Skinwalkers, the Fresno Skinwalkers. I guess I'm not quite awake yet. Fresno Skinwalkers, and I live in Fresno, so we're gonna debate the Fresno Skinwalkers, which I don't know. Are they real? Maybe they are real. Like when I was in college, we had to do it. It was my media research class, and it's a whole thing where you learn how to like research a topic in the media, and then you do surveys and charts and answer questions. You know, go through a phase of all of it, right? So. And we were first just like throwing ideas out there, and I was like, well, why don't we do a research on the Fresno Skinwalkers? Like, are they real? How many people think they're real or they're not real? Or something like that. But of course, that was a little too out there for them. But we could do for the academic, and it was too out there for the class, right? And we did another topic which we got an A on, but. The Fresno Skinwalkers, though, that was just something that I think is just really kind of interesting. Like, obviously people have heard noises or ghosts or seen things, or, there's people that, talk about meeting aliens, there's, especially in the world that we're in. And then you get with the lead singer, Billy Corgan, from the Smashing Pumpkins, has like a story of somebody shape-shifting, right? And, it just so happens that person, is rumored to have been Courtney Love. I'm laughing about it, but that's kind of like the culture we're living in right now. It's not, in a way, it's not just like, what we've been talking about on the internet. So, or on YouTube in Conspiracy World. I hope you're enjoying yourself like I am talking about David Schroeder. No, David Schroeder has actually, okay, so let's talk about Max. Max is he's a UFO conspiracy researcher. That is his title, a UFO conspiracy researcher. And his grandfather was Herbert Percy, who was in movies, The Bounty, Bridge over River Kwai, and he was on UK television shows, and guest starred on our television shows over here in the United States. We saw his face. It's like I think he's one of those faces, like in my childhood when you're, consuming television, it's like it was a memory that I remembered. Like when I saw him, like when, again, recently Vanessa Bates shared a picture of her father, and I went, oh yeah, I remember his face. It's like it goes back in your little memory Filodex that you have. And I am very harsh on people that are actors, because I'm one. I'm that's what I was doing with my life. I started performing when I was 9 in productions locally, whether it be elementary school or, a dinner theater that's here in my town. Like I grew up in the theater. Like I was going to get a t-shirt that when people ask me to go someplace, I go, I can't, I have a rehearsal. And, when I first went to college, I was a theater arts major at Fresno City College. And then I got accepted into the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I moved to Pasadena, California, and I studied acting. And then from there, after, doing plays and productions in LA, and, you know, looking for agents and this and that, I went into stand-up comedy. And then I became a comedian. I never for once thought that I was ever going to leave the other aspects of like what I did creatively. You know, it's like stand-up comedy was just kind of like, oh, I'm a comedian now. It was just kind of like it sort of happened. It came easy for me back then. I mean, I had an aptitude for it already. I was already doing musicals. I was already doing comedy with a script. It wasn't hard for me to transfer it over to just talking to people. So, so I know what's possible in terms of, you know, getting in front of a webcam, or I know it's not a webcam anymore, but, you know, putting your camera on, putting your cell phone on, or putting your computer on and doing a show. And or pretending that you wrote The Matrix. And then give some story and about how they were abused by a famous evangelist, and then cry on camera and then lose your place in the script. That's when I knew he was lying. Because when you're an actor, right? When you're an actor, when you're trained, when you're supposed to be able to like cry on cue or do this or that or make people believe something. Sometimes, you know, if you're in rehearsal or you don't know your lines totally, or you get lost in your own emotion, you forget your lines or whatever, you'll look down. You'll go, and then you can see where you're looking down and you're trying to make up what you think your eyes see while they're watering with tears, and it's all jumbled. And that's what he did. And that was Tom Althouse. Unfortunately, if you go to the IMBDs and whatever, he's done all of our interviews as his own documentary on how he wrote The Matrix. And again, when I talk about The Matrix, this is like the crux of The Matrix. Like I even, there's a woman, Sophia Stewart, who claims to have written The Matrix. And I interviewed her a couple times. And she gives her reason why she's the authentic writer of The Matrix. And she says that she also wrote The Terminator. So it was a trilogy that, you know, the Terminator is Neo. Like John Connor is Neo, basically, somehow. I mean, I can see where you can draw a correlation between those are they're the same, you know, character tropes. And, you know, when you look at those scripts, it's man versus technology or man versus AI, right? Which, in a sense, if you think about it, is a real fear with people. And when I was in my Anthropology 2 class at Fresno State, and my professor said, you know, about like how our species, the human race, I mean, and David Schroeder's like on his channel talking about how, you know, get ready for your extinction. Those are extinction events, right? Okay, well, you know, at the same time, every species on the planet, everything has gone extinct, and then there's been one that is a branch that goes off and is the next. And I know a lot of people like, and I know like if you're talking about like the extraterrestrial species and things like this, right? Well, you know, there's this theory that, you know, there were other beings that seeded down and took our DNA and did something to it and made it into theirs. And so some people are maybe a hybrid of something that was actually extraterrestrial. And, you know, a lot of people believe that, or they also believe that their soul, that they remember, or they believe that they have lived on other planets besides just this one, and that the soul is actually having a human experience, but before they might have been ET. There are that is another belief that people believe might be a reality within this community. And I'm just telling you about the things that I have known that people have talked about it and explained, or listened to a video about, or a teacher of this, or however, right? And sometimes, these kind of beliefs, can be controlled, like, let's say, Heaven's Gate, where you can think about, like, the Jim Jones situation with Christianity, or New Age, or whatever you want to call it. Some of these beliefs turn into actual cults that can be damaging on people, right? And I also want to open it up to the fact that this cult could also be something that becomes a political weapon, or a political presence, let's put it that way, in our society. Now, again, I'm talking about a theory about that. I'm not saying it's real, because I really don't know for sure. But as time goes on, I start to think that maybe that's what it is. Especially in lieu of how things are being played out right now in politically. Like, sometimes I look at that and I go, oh my God, it's like they're imploding on themselves in a way. In maybe the facade of what was presented to the Americans as being true, or who that person was, or who they are, or what is really the truth. Because that movement, that crunch that is happening surrounding the client list, the media that I'm talking about over here, that connects to Max Spiers and connects to the UFO community and paranormal community, etc., is, you cannot separate the two. David Wilcock has participated in it, and even had an ebook about it. So, there is no separation here in how people are manipulated. If you think about it, there's the evangelical vote. That is a belief, like even a religious belief vote. And so, do you not think that what this is doesn't have those same elements? I mean, some of these people that are pushing this alternative ways, sovereign citizens, all of it, right? Connected to this, David Robot Steele, I'm calling Robot Steele, but Robert David Steele was part of that movement with Cynthia McKinney. All of these things, Sasha Stone was involved with that over here in the United States. All of these things have become a part of a narrative, or a belief of what is real, a belief of what people desire, what they want their world to look like, or what they believe their world is. And I did some research on the red pill, in the Matrix. Like, you take the blue pill or you take the red pill. I did some research on it, Britannica.com and everything like that. I wrote a little bit about this, but here's the part that I didn't write, is that in this movement, in this 17th letter of the alphabet that happened, and let's say you believe that there is like a secret government, or there's a 1% controlling our reality, or whatever, and maybe even our reality is more multidimensional. There's more to just 3D and in what we think, what is real. And then you take that, there's this superiority that a person can, there's this victimhood that a person has because they feel that they're the victim and the fighter to their system. But with the players that disseminate it, there's a superiority that they carry, thinking that they're the ones that have the knowledge, or they're the ones that have the knowledge of like what really, really is real. And if you don't agree with those people or what you think is real, then you're the sheep. You are the bad guy. You're the one who doesn't know what they're really facing, or how they're actually really being manipulated. And or they're the scapegoat, where they're the evil ones, and they equate to the villain in the Matrix. And I find it really interesting that there are these people that also have come into this dynamic and claimed that they were actually the creator of that concept, or what was going on in the first place in the Matrix. They were the ones who thought it in their mind and put it into a story. Therefore, they are the oracle of the information that has changed the dynamic of how people think. Think about that for a second. But whatever it is, it has changed the way we think. And there are certain individuals like Max Spiers who also were in the forerunner of this media and may have been like the tip of the iceberg in what was to come farther down politically. Because one of the things that Max was talking about, I mean, everybody wants to focus on, oh yeah, he said he was a super soldier and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And he timed him to Mars and stuff like this and everything, right? Well, there could also be another theory of like maybe why he did think those things. Because let's say there are certain people that maybe were in a program, and there are certain children that were project, I don't know, whatever, mind controlled, trained to be government assets to something else, right? And that later on, when they get to be like around 30 or something like that, as they say, if you have MK Ultra, it might start to break down, and like things might bleed through, like the Jason Bourne thing. Like you have Jason Bournes, which they've done film scripts about, that there are people that they might believe that the CIA or whomever had experimented in mind control on individuals. And, they say, oh, this doesn't exist anymore. But, there are people that are saying, no, it still doesn't exist. And, it might have even like been perfected. I'm taking a pause on that for a second. Pooty says, I'm not a sheep, I'm a turd. That's right. Pooty says, maybe they brainwashed him into believing it. Yes, that's where I'm going with it. There could be certain elements of things that Max Spiers said that he really didn't like happen to him, that might not have happened to him. And there was somebody who was like a handler, and the handler could have been a girlfriend. The handler could have been Stuart Swerdlow, for example, or it could have been Miles Johnston. It could have been anybody who got into his self, and maybe said that they were a psychic, that they knew things, that they could pick up things, like, I know this is what's really happening to you. And because something did happen to him, and maybe they're giving him some alcohol, they're giving him some whatever, you name it, what might have been in his bloodstream and his toxology report. And in those induced states, they say things to him that either trigger him or he believes might actually be true. Now, is that a possibility? I'm not saying it is, like, I know, because that's not what I do here on Not My Rabbit Hole. I try not to speak in definites unless I know something's definite, unless I have the actual receipt. But there's nothing wrong with actually wondering if that's not a possibility. The thing that makes really Max Spiers, like, when you look at David Schroeder, who, if you don't know, David Schroeder is, he wrote his book, Not My Rabbit Hole, back in 2011, 2012, talking about his satanic ritual abuse survivor experience, which, by the way, David has just admitted that came to him in memories, in a mind control breakdown. Like, what I'm explaining is what Max said. All right. But let me specify something that is different between Max and, let's say, even Isaac, or Fiona Barnett, or anybody, any of these people that David talks about that came up where they combined occultism and elitism with SRA. I'm going to try to not say exactly what it is, because again, it's an algorithm thing, and there's only so much I think YouTube wants you to say. But it connects to what Angela Power Disney is known for participating in over in the UK, and a lot of things that happen over there, and then in the kernel of all of the, then you have Michael Aquino in San Francisco with the Presidio daycare scandal. You have the McMartin preschool scandal. These are real things that happen, real cases that happen. We do know that Michael Aquino he was out on television, on Oprah, on Geraldo, saying that he was a Satanist. And at that time, people had never really heard that before. I remember my mom, like, there's one time I lived in Los Angeles. I'd moved from Fresno. I was rooted down there at this point. My life took hold in Southern California. I think maybe I identified myself as a Southern California person. Yeah, okay, yeah, I grew up in Fresno, but this is really my place, right? That's kind of how I thought then. There's a snobbery against Fresno or being from Fresno. Let me tell you, it's even in the movies. You want to say you're from someplace else, not Fresno. Let's just put it that way. That's how Hollywood views us here in Fresno. Now I embrace Fresno. Now I'm proud of Fresno. Now I think Fresno is awesome. Proud to be here. Proud to be a Fresnan. That's right. Central Valley. Know it. Go Dogs. The Red Wave. I've been indoctrinated, people. Where was I? Max Spiers, David Schroeder. So David Schroeder, I really didn't know much about David Schroeder until recently. Like, I knew he had, like, I knew when I was on Revolution Radio and I was on American Freedom Radio and doing these shows and talking about similar things. Oh, believe me, I carried the torch on a lot of these conspiracies. And you know what? I'm glad they're washed off the internet. Like, I'm really glad I lost my last channel. That was a former self that it should be dumped off the internet. It was an experience. I think there's some things that I was saying that was true. Especially my commentary on the media itself that I started to do. But it was during that time on that channel with that show, Freedom of Joyce, on Revolution Radio and American Freedom Radio, that I interviewed Max Spiers for the first time. And this was in 2015. And I was really super excited that I was going to interview him, because I had watched him, from the beginning almost. I watched him right as I would listen to him on Revolution Radio being interviewed by Roxy Lopez live before I realized that I was going to be part of Revolution Radio. Like, there were things that James Casbold and Max Spiers were saying that I couldn't get enough of. Like, it was I didn't want to tell people, like, in my real life, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are saying this over here. And they go, what? Oh, come on. But they were fascinating to me. Fascinating. The things that they said, especially in that first interview with Carrie Cassidy. It wasn't about, going to these. It wasn't the secret space program like Captain Mark Richards, like what James Rink has made it. There were things that they said in that interview that have to do with dynamics that involve racism and Nazi and, not and Zionism and, these things, that they were even saying that, there were politicians that had an ancestry of this. Families that have dominated the presidencies have an ancestry of belief systems that you would think maybe might be a danger to the freedom of the United States, or because our country has always been seen as, a freedom country. We believe that we have rights. We believe that, I thought we were humane, that we had compassion, that we helped people, that we did take refugees in, and we helped the sick, and what the Statue of Liberty represent. The sick and the hungry come in. America has you. Here's the new land for you to have a new world, a dream. That is the American dream. Do you think what's happening right now is the American dream? I don't, personally. I don't. And I guess I just should stop it right there. Okay? Because I'm pretty sure you don't want to hear the rest of what I really feel today. Because you came here to talk about Max Spiers, to talk about what's happening. What David Schurter, how David Schurter is using who Max Spiers is for his own narrative and his own narrative to attack me intentionally. And he didn't just do it 2 days ago or 3 days ago. I believe it's 3 days ago. He didn't just say it on his channel 3 days ago. He's been doing it for a year and a half, because David Schurter, who has his own story about what happened to his family, and a satanic family and its family deal and the family Luciferians, and it's the way he was brought up, kind of like what Fiona Barnett said, right? And then you have Max Spiers, who doesn't say his family is guilty of anything like that, but he talks about knowledge of the elite, the rich, the people that have the power, and them doing it. People that were born into families of power and influence. And he did some interesting shows about the music business and what happens in the music business. And, a lot of those things are really coming to the forefront right now in ways that he was kind of one of the first people to say that it existed. And, he said these things as at a time on the internet where we were allowed to have those conversations freely. And I think that's why it's kind of hard to find some of Max Spiers' footage, because Carrie Cassidy and, Miles Johnston have lost their channels. I guess maybe I can stop the share here, and this, you can just see that for a second. I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, I want to make sure you can hear me. If you're just joining, good morning. It is 10:21. Wow, I didn't realize I've been talking for almost an hour and a half already. I haven't really even gotten to the point. The point is David Schurter, for whatever reason, and I'm going to, kind of show his YouTube channel to just date a title of a video when he first started talking about me, has one said, I never knew Max Spiers. Although, like, my upload, I did a re-upload from my Revolution Radio. Not only did I do an interview with him, but it was in Sean David Morton's apartment while I was house sitting his cats in Redondo Beach when he and his wife Melissa went on a conspiracy cruise. Okay? And you hear me, I think I even say it during the broadcast, because Sean David Morton was a host on Strange Universe with Sean David Morton on Revolution Radio. All right? And Angela Perry Disney's out there going, oh, she never knew Max Spiers. No, you know what? Really, the truth is Angela Perry Disney really never interviewed Max Spiers, and she really didn't know him all that great. I mean, I've seen dialogue between Angela Perry Disney and, another lady who was thinking that Angela was going to connect her with Max Spiers, and she came up empty-handed, and she says, I thought you said you knew him, and she goes, I never said that, and gaslit the lady. And, I believe I have these screenshots of this, and I did a video about Angela. I did a deep dive into Angela Perry Disney and who she is and where she came from and how she got a big launch on Miles Johnston's Spaces project. I think somewhere on the internet, like on YouTube, if you look, there's a video, I think basically Miles Johnston in the title is pretty insulting to her, like when an interview is toxic or something like that. Toxicity, I don't know, it's got something not favorable of her as a person, really, because Angela Perry Disney has talked a lot of shite about Miles Johnston. I mean, I've not been great to Miles Johnston either, but I still have criticisms of Miles. I don't feel, as angry. I mean, I feel like maybe if I met Miles, I don't know if Miles would ever really want to meet me. But I feel like I could be cordial or have a conversation or maybe even like do a show or talk to him or whatever. Right? I mean, do I think he's full of shite? Yes, in many respects, yes. Problem is even if a host didn't have discernment, like let's say Coast to Coast or whatever, there's networks that just look for this kind of material because there's people that will tune in to Bigfoot or whatever. They will. And it doesn't matter if the person is telling the truth or not, because how do you validate the truth of Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster or a super soldier program? How do you validate that as being real or not? What are the closest connections to the reality of what that is? Okay, well, maybe it's the men who stare at goats. It's that part of our military that they use people with psychic abilities for, remote viewing by the military for warfare. I mean, we use psychics as, to solve cases. In many ways, psychic ability and psychic intuition and, kinesthetics and all those abilities that might seem that come from the mind, like watch The Matrix, you see the spoon bend, that scene with the spoon bending. No, you don't bend the spoon, you bend your mind. What is a particle? Is it a solid or is it a liquid? Is it not? Is it like the particle is the thought? The thought, there is no that belief. We manifest, like The Secret, we manifest what we want to have to be our reality. Well, back then on Revolution Radio, a person could use their psychic ability to harm or maybe take another person's life. And there were people that came on, and I knew and, confessed or whatever, that this was the case, and an ability, or like they would say this was a form of a psychic assassin. There were people that came out before Max Spiers, like Duncan O'Finian and Jim Corsi. They were like the forerunners before Max and James happened. And there were already the label of the Super Soldier Summits. And there was, if anybody is like, even, if you're interested about this particular topic, look into Duncan O'Finian. I mean, it's hard to find him. Randy Moggins had him on had him on a show a lot. I did shows a lot with Duncan O'Finian, and Duncan O'Finian I was doing interviews with him when Max died, and he was giving me his perspective, or our audience his perspective of the details or what was happening surrounding the death of Max. Because when it happened, we didn't know what happened. I mean, we realized something happened in Poland. He makes a message to his mom and says, "If I die suddenly, investigate." His computer was wiped. His cell phone was wiped. The SIM card was damaged and mailed back to Vanessa Bates in a book about ritual occult sacrifices. And I have confirmed that with Vanessa. These are the real details of like what happened to Max. And as a person who interviewed him and I have a media platform. Matter of fact, just last night, Stephen Cambion on Truth Seekers replayed me on his show talking about Max Spiers because he knows that I have a lot of knowledge about it. And yet, David Schurter, who grifts and has been harassing me for a year and a half with 17 letter of the alphabet bylines, clearly associated with channels that promoted that publicly, and Isaac Cappy. That guy supports David Schurter, denies he ever interviewed me. I don't feel like mentioning his name right now. He's irrelevant at the moment. We're talking about Max and how David Schurter grifts off of Max and then weaponizes Max against people that he has a personal problem with. That's what's happening with David Schurter. And let's just get back to this media. I have questioned things about how Miles Johnston reported, the details of Max, or how James Rink reported the details of Max, or anybody else that was part of the super soldier mythology and what might have actually happened in Poland. So what was on his laptop? Why did Sarah Rachel Adams make up a story that they were sexting each other and his cell phone fell in the bathtub and that's how it was damaged? Why would she make that up when she wasn't in a relationship with him at the same time? And ironically, guess who she was going out with? Sean Stone, whose father did the conspiracy movies and now became the conspiracy thing, and also perpetuated the 17th letter of the alphabet and did 107 things alongside Carrie Cassidy. Do you see how that goes? Because I do. I'm making the connection. Maybe I'm the ultimate conspiracy theorist and I'm going to get criticism for it. But that's what I see. That's the pattern that I see. I mean, everybody in this community is working like pattern recognition is part of science. That is the beginning of questioning. Like, there's a pattern here. What's the hypothesis? Let me test the hypothesis. Is it or isn't it? It's the basis of science. What is David Schurter doing but like repeating and going after every single person that has been part of a Sophia Music, the guy behind that channel, his narrative? And those of us who have been targets of that narrative for, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, whatever. I mean, for some people, it's much longer than me. There are certain patterns of what happens. One, he will share what David Schurter says on his channel, his Sophia Music channel, and back him and support him, even though David Schurter attacks him. But don't be fooled by that. I think what people need to pay attention to is the behavior of what people do. Do they get attacked by somebody but also back them at the same time? How much of that happens here? Is what David Schroeder being echoed over here by Denise Matau? It did. It was for, more than a year for me. What she said, he said. What he said, she said. And then Sophia Music shared it. And he made his posts on X or social media on everywhere he could possibly do. And that's how it works. And, Mr. Lift the Veil just endorsed David Schroeder, but then says he's being attacked by Sophia Music. And, he's under the same attack, but basically I'm somehow the villain in this situation. So I got tipped off. This is what you guys need to know, right? There was a time where Arturo Tafoya Lestat was talking to me on Twitter, on X, and he tipped me off because at that time, this is what he told me. He said, when I was angry that he went back to Sophia Music and their endeavors and stuff, right? I called him a traitor. I even called him a Judas for being a traitor like that, for participating in another narrative publicly, also connected to Laura Dilley, who now Sophia Music is suing for her research paper, even though Lestat, at the time that she was doing the research paper, was connected to her. And apparently the criticism is that he influenced her, and yet he's back with that person. All right? I mean, that's basically kind of like, I think, part of the argument here, right? So that guy who, when everything went down with me, when I had Denise Matau on my channel or whatever, in that one fateful interview that I did with her, it wasn't really an interview. I just, I had her on. I was whatever. Arturo found me. Chester Cat was saying a lot of negative things about Sophia Music and why I shouldn't talk to him or why I shouldn't be around and, whatever. Lots of stuff like that was coming from him. And during the time where he went back to him, he told me, I'm faking it. I'm undercover. I'm undercover to I'm a mole with Thomas Schoenberger. So don't tell anybody that I'm a mole. But, and I said, okay. So he tipped me off because I was, at the time, David Schroeder was going off on Corey Daniel and, his wife and somebody we called Captain Underpants, which ended up being Gio. And, then there was Daniel Dowd. It was happening. And I'll call him Lestat right now. Lestat, Arturo Lestat, right? Lestat tells me that David Schroeder is going to go off him. He's going to start. He knows on the inside that I am the next target for David Schroeder, and David Schroeder is going to start talking about me. So for me, from the get-go, there was always a connection to this other player, right? No, I'd rather avoid his name. We'll just say T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot is, and you have to realize Lestat went back to T.S. Eliot, right? And he tells me David Schroeder is going to start to come after me, which makes me think that the whole thing, in terms of me, was an actual plan. It's an actual hit to be part of the other operation of this with Denise and everything else, right? Because we're talking about patterns here. We're talking about what people do, what people get targeted. Like The online harassment is an operation. They do it together. They have their own patches about it. Psychological warfare, because physical wounds heal, right? And ironically, for my channel, or maybe you should know this, is my number one video on this channel with the most views ever. I don't know. Last time I think it was 24,000, but that was like a year ago. So it's probably higher than that. It's my number one video viewed on my entire channel, is my one interview with Max Spiers. And I think the reason why that is that's the magnitude of how people knew him. That's the magnitude of how he affected people. I would say most of the people who claim to be super soldiers or special abilities or psychic, whatever, they never had that kind of influence that Max Spiers and, let's say, James Casbolt does. And I would even say more for Max Spiers because of the nature of what happened to him. And I have always argued that Max was the forerunner or the first of saying that ended up being amplified or made more grotesque or not in mythology. I'm not saying it is mythology, but this thing that now Donald Trump is, that they were saying was the Democrats were guilty for things that David Schroeder talks about, like he's talking about cannibalism and, ritual this and that, and, Luciferian initiations and, all the things that, you would may have been outlined in the McMartin preschool case. But only those things are just attached to one political party and only belonged to the Democrats. And then we got this idea that we were going to have this president that was going to give out the client list. And now it's blamed back on the Democrats as making the whole thing up. When I know for a fact, you can look at David Schroeder and realize that he's still saying it. And what is he, a Democrat or not a Republican? So what is this? It's really like what he's saying, and I would say in many people's minds is at this point kind of outdated. Now he does a sleight of the hand and says, "Oh, don't pay attention to Jeffrey Epstein or anything over here." He smatterly associates himself to Virginia Giuffre, saying that he found her in the astral and they're going to go after people together, which he's also said about Max Spiers. David Schroeder has also come out with a jealous green eye, basically, and said, when you Google my name, Max Spiers, my work or name or whatever comes up highest in the algorithm, I guess, at that time. And he was upset about that because David Schroeder uses Max Spiers, and what happened to Max Spiers incorporates Max Spiers, says that he psychopumps people with Max Spiers, said he was going after me with Max Spiers against me because I did something wrong to him. And what's disturbing about David Schroeder and his narrative and whatever he might be activating in minds of people that somehow want to, are triggered by this stuff, he uses doomsday scenarios, religious control and context, saying that heaven has made him the ambassador. He is the Grim Reaper to he's accusing me of doing the crimes that these satanic Kabbalists would be doing. And while I've been in college this entire time getting a degree, focused on changing my life and being a good human being and being of service to my community by writing articles and doing podcasts and searching for what the truth is right now. I've got David Schurter over here accusing me of the most heinous crimes against children, including stealing his Social Security and being responsible for Max Spiers' death. And I will say this, I've had enough of it. I mean, I could go in here and, show you like a pith load of things that David Schurter said as receipts or whatever. But you know what? Take your pick. Just go to David Schurter's channel. Go through his shorts when you go down farther. I'll show you really quick where the level, even this, of what he's done. This is an on and on stuff right here. Okay? He shows me talking about it and clips it. Takes my images. Not my rabbit hole. All right. Over here, still talking about me. That was from my show. They're all working together. I mean, it goes on. Here he is again. That's me right there. It goes on and on and on. Max Spiers. Does Tere Joyce ever get tired of lying? Using Max Spiers again. Again, talking about me right here. Right now, he talks about me daily. Daily. Has reference of putting me through a wood chipper with other people. I mean, I could go on. Yeah, and on and on and on. And I want to tell you guys right now, this is probably going to be my last video that I ever make about David Schurter publicly. I think it is wrong for him to do what he's been doing to me. And I know if he's doing it to me, he's doing it to other people. Because at this point, I have other things to talk about on my channel. Number one, that I want to bring my attention to. He's just a symptom of something much greater going on the internet. And from now on, every action that I take against David Schurter, or really any of these players right now who aren't really worth talking about anymore in the first place, will come from a different angle. And that includes law enforcement and courts. Restraining orders. Things of that nature. Because it's gotten to that point. And that's really all I have to say about it. Because really, the more you talk about him, the more you talk about any of these people, the more they continue what they're doing. And it doesn't work. There's another form of action. And trust me, I'm making those things happen. Have a wonderful Sunday, everybody.
He ain't no Saint Germain, no crown, no name. He plays the game sharp as a flame. Who's to blame for the stolen fame? A shadow dance in the devil's frame. Go in a rabbit hole, losing control, spinning wild on a stripper pole. Laughing loud, all for the lows, but baby, that's not my rabbit hole. City lights and sirens scream, truth and lies blend like a dream. Wicked smiles, a clever scheme, chasing gold in the neon gleam. Go in the rabbit hole, losing control, spinning wild on the stripper pole. Laughing loud, all for the lows, but baby, that's not my rabbit hole. Fast, can't find the ground, echoes of chaos all around. You chose this dance, this mad parade, but not every choice gets accolades. Go in the rabbit hole, losing control, spinning wild on the stripper pole. Laughing loud, all for the lows, but baby, that's not my rabbit hole. Spinning wild on the stripper pole. Laughing loud, all for the lows, but baby, that's not my rabbit hole. City lights and sirens scream, truth and lies blend like a dream. Wicked smiles, a clever scheme, chasing gold in the neon gleam. Going down the rabbit hole, losing control, spinning wild on the stripper pole. Laughing loud, all for the lows, but baby, that's not my rabbit hole.